Assalamualaikum and good day, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Mohd Tajuddin Abdullah. My parents call me Tajuddin. My friends call me Tash. When I was a small boy, my grandmother and my mother liked to tell stories about wildlife, including mythology. The stories told by some 6 decades ago as oral literature are passed down from one generation to another generation. I'm going to pass to you and share my mystical stories and our past experiences about our natural environment and natural resources. These stories can just be an oral literature or real situation that you can pass on to your future generations. In Pahang, the Malays and Orang Asal folklore, there are the stories about Seri Gumum dragon, which is a legendary giant serpent, locally called Naga, that inhabited the Chini lake. There have been a variety of legends associated with the creature, including Naga Pulau Tioman in the oral literature, and that will be our next adventure. The folklore of the dragon of Seri Gumum in the basin of Tasik, Chini greatly influenced my childhood. The dragon was living in the upper part of Sungai Pahang, and our kampung Mengkasa is about 70 kilometers downstream. In the basin, there are 2 lakes, the extinct Tasik Mentiga and the ecologically dying Tasik Chini. The lush green forest full of wildlife such as elephant, tigers, tapir, gibbon, monkey, birds, and bats once surrounded the whole area of Tasik Chini Basin. The most powerful of all the animals was the Seri Gumum dragon. Whenever there was a big flood, my mother and grandmother used to say, "Naga Seri Gumum dah keluar ni." Tasik Chini was once a very beautiful area with lush trees, green reeds, and pink flowers of water lilies. Tasik Chini became famous as tourist destination that attract many from Malaysia, Europe, America, and Japan. Today, the reeds and lilies are gone in Tasik Chini and Tasik Mentiga due to poor environment and heavy pollution from the early economic development. Tasik Mentiga was one beautiful with many water birds and fish for the livelihood of the local Orang Asal community. Today, the lake is heavily polluted and no fish or water bird in the area. Lake is an important ecosystem that will bring many goods and services to the human. The Malayan tiger is a tertiary predator that controls the population of prey species, which in turn maintain the balance of the ecosystem and environment. This balance is important for all wildlife species as well as for human. A balanced natural forest is important for humans who are depending on the ecosystem services such as clean water and pollination to produce fruits and seeds for new plants. Once in a while, Tasik Mentiga and Tasik Chini receive VVIP from Pahang and Kuala Lumpur to meet up with the Orang Asal living in the area. In the early 1970s and 1980s, there were massive physical changes in the landscape of Tasik Mentiga and Tasik Chini. The forests were heavily logged to generate revenue for the socio-economic development of the country. Animals and orang asal were displaced. Orang asal of Tasik Metiga had settled in the kampung, is self-employed or working in the plantation or tending their crops. In Chini is deteriorating and the ecologically defunction that no longer bring any goods and services. The livelihood of local communities are dependent on the lake, were affected and without any tourists to be as nature guides. Some make ends meet by collecting medicinal plants useful for the dukun and bidan in the Malay community. Rubber and oil palm plantation have now replaced the natural forest ecosystem in the Tasik Chini Basin. In our lifetime, we have witnessed the extinction of the Javan rhinoceros in 1932 and the Sumatran rhinoceros in 2020. The tape is now a threatened species and displaced from the natural forest as well. The elephants are displaced too, living in shrinking habitat, and some are placed in a rescue center manned by the Jabatan Perlitan. These large mammals are mega gardeners, moving large amount of seed away from the parent tree and keep the maintenance of the dynamics of the Malaysian tropical ecosystem to provide goods and services to humans. These apex predators are left without any, about 150 individuals, and risk extinction by 2027. Some species like the gibbon and siamang are at the end of the ecological road and may face localized extinction sooner than to 2027 because of loss of large trees and forest canopy. We are rather fortunate that the government has provided annual budget for the rehabilitation of habitat and environmental management. Sustainable financing model as the giant panda, where the global citizens contribute to protect our endangered species such as elephant, seladang, tape, orangutan, and endangered birds like hornbill and Malayan peacock pheasant. Building of barns will track the debris from flowing into the lakes and the rivers. Once the water is good, we can restock the local fish species. The soil microbe and earthworm help to enrich the soil structure and fertility for planting of herbs and trees. Planting of commercially trees will be devoid of animal and the forest will just like a green desert. Planting of flowers such as senduduk will attract butterflies, honeybees, and clueless birds and small mammals who feed on these invertebrates. Later, the snake and monitor lizard will be lurking on these birds. The entire process started the food web and food change. Planting of banana will attract bats and birds. Durian will attract fruit bats. Tapioca will attract wild pigs and small animals. Our local communities can plant medicinal herbs for their livelihood and own consumption. The ficus or fig trees is the keystone species that will bring back all wildlife to revitalize the forest ecosystem. Then we can talk about carbon sink and helping the world on the greenhouse gases problems. In the 1970s, I learned the forest survival skill from the orang asal named Kangkong Bemintol and Mr. Ronnie Flynn, an American Peace Corps who worked in Malaysia in lieu of the Vietnam War service, introduced me to the first track of the Sumatran rhinoceros in December 1977. Back then, the big boys dominated the wildlife research work. We also learned from our famous giant, Dr. Lim Bu Liat, who is well known to be the zoologist in Malaysia. Since the 2020s and after 5 decades, we pass our knowledge to younger generation, are mostly girls. Young professionals with higher degrees, PhD and masters, are needed to work and protect our forests and wildlife. Good documentation of our biodiversity is important in drawing up management and action plan for environmental rehabilitation and awareness. The ASM strategic planning for the sustainability of Chini Basin suggests the following. One is to gazette the Tasik Chini and Tasik Mentega Estate Park. Number 2 is determination of high conservation value area, vulnerable area, and sensitive area. 3, co-management of the areas with all stakeholders, including local communities. 3, environmental management and monitoring. 4, ecosystem rehabilitation and monitoring. And finally is to conduct deep applied research to bring back the biodiversity with appropriate budget and resources and time. Our generation have moved from little villages to live in big modern urbanized areas. Our children are living in little high density apartment. Our children spend more time with video game and play in shopping complexes. Unlike their forefathers, they never go into the forest and more to collect fruits and tubers or hunts animals. All are found in clean supermarket. Our children will never see the beautiful Tasik Mentega or Tasik Chini anymore. Our grandchildren will never hear on the demise of the large Seri Gumum dragon in Tasik Chini Basin anymore. Metaphorically, our future generation will regard tigers, elephants, and rhinos as mysticism of our present-day biodiversity, similar to the death of the Seri Gumum dragon and our wildlife in Mentega and Chini. We must protect the biodiversity now for the future of unborn children, or else our present-day stories of elephant, seladang, tape, tiger, and gibbon are going to be an oral history as mythology of the future generation. I'd like to thank the support from ASM as well as DWMP, JAQUA, JMG, DOE, DO Pekan, as well as my colleague Tuan Haji Wahi, and all the ASM support team. Pictures are taken by various people, including Dr. Abdullah, Dr. Nabayuki Yamaguchi, Abang Arbi, Azroy, and also from the Pahang Tourism. I also acknowledge the contribution from Awaludin bin Ramli for the illustration of this presentation. Terima kasih and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.